I never imagined standing on a crowded city bus in Portland would become the moment my life split into before and after. Yet there I am, one hand braced against a metal pole, the other cradling my belly, where my daughter kicks against the tension radiating through my body. 8.5 months pregnant, and my feet throb inside shoes that stopped fitting weeks ago. Gavin's face transforms before my eyes. The charming smile he wore when we boarded vanishes, replaced by something cold and sharp. His jaw tightens as he leans toward me. "Elena," he whispers, each syllable precise and controlled. "Get up." My gaze shifts to Sylvia, my mother-in-law, standing beside him with expectation etched across her face. She clutches her designer purse with manicured fingers, a sigh building in her chest. "There are no more seats," I say, the words barely audible above the rumble of the engine. The bus lurches around a corner. I tighten my grip on the pole, watching other passengers avert their eyes. An unspoken rule of public transportation: pretend you don't notice the discomfort of strangers. My mother needs to sit down. Gavin's voice drops lower. That dangerous tone I've learned means consequences later. Stop being so selfish. Selfish, the word he uses whenever I fail to anticipate their needs. I'm fine standing, I offer, though we both know I'm not. Sylvia makes her move then, a performance she's perfected over the 2 years I've been married to her son. "Oh, Gavin, don't make a fuss." Her voice carries just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Though I raised you better than to marry someone so disrespectful to her elders." The bus falls silent. Even the usual chatter of teenagers in the back seats dies away. A woman across the aisle glances up from her book, eyes darting between us. Gavin's hand closes around my arm, fingers pressing into flesh. "Move, now." Something shifts inside me. Maybe it's the baby turning, or maybe it's the last fragment of my former self refusing to disappear completely. I look down at his hand, then up to meet his eyes. "No." The word hangs between us, small but solid. His grip tightens. "You're making a scene." "You're hurting me," I say, no longer whispering. An older woman stands from her seat 3 rows back. She moves with the deliberate confidence of someone who spent decades making difficult decisions. Silver hair frames a face lined with experience, her eyes clear and direct. "Take your hand off her right now." Her voice cuts through the tension, brooking no argument. Gavin releases me, but his eyes promise retribution. "This is between me and my wife," he says, summoning the charming smile that won over my friends, my family, my heart. The woman doesn't smile back. Not anymore, it isn't. The driver catches my eye in his rearview mirror. With a decisive movement, he pulls the bus to the curb and turns in his seat. "Ma'am," he calls to me, ignoring Gavin completely, "do you feel safe going home with them?" The question strips away years of careful pretending. I see myself reflected in the concerned faces around me, a pregnant woman being bullied on public transportation. What must they think? What would I think watching this scene unfold? Tears blur my vision. "No," I whisper, the truth of it burning my throat. "No, I don't." Gavin's public mask slips. "You're being ridiculous. She's hormonal," he announces to the bus at large. "Pregnancy brain. You know how it is." Sylvia steps forward, hand outstretched in maternal concern that never extends beyond appearances. "Elena, sweetie, let's all go home and talk about this. Think of the baby." The silver-haired woman steps between us. "My name is Dorothy Fields. I'm a retired domestic violence counselor." She hands me a card. "And I don't think you should go anywhere with them." "This is absurd." Gavin's voice rises. "Elena, if you don't come home with us right now, there will be consequences." The threat hangs in the air, confirming everything. I remember our first meeting at my college friend's wedding, his attentiveness, remembering my favorite flowers, the way my parents suggested a longer engagement, and how I laughed off their caution. The bus driver stands now. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you and the older lady to exit my bus." "She's my wife," Gavin says, as if that explains everything, as if it gives him ownership. Dorothy's hand touches my shoulder lightly. "Would you like me to help you get somewhere safe?" I look at Gavin's man, whose smile once made my heart race, now making my heart race for entirely different reasons. At Sylvia, who moved in temporarily after our wedding and never left. "I'm not going home with you," I say, my voice steadier than I feel. When I turn away from them both, something inside me stands a little straighter. The baby kicks, strong and insistent, as if applauding. 20 minutes later, Dorothy's fingers tremble slightly as she secures the deadbolt on her front door. The electronic beep of her security system announces our safety with a mechanical certainty I find oddly comforting. "Tea?" she asks, moving toward a kitchen that smells of cinnamon and sage. I ease my swollen body onto her floral sofa, my hand automatically moving to cradle my belly. "Yes, please." The afternoon light filters through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across a living room filled with books and photographs. No cameras in the corners, no motion sensors disguised as smoke detectors. The absence of surveillance feels both foreign and familiar, like remembering how to breathe after holding your breath underwater. "He installed cameras last spring," I say, the words tumbling out before I can reconsider. "For my protection," he said, "after someone broke into a house 3 streets over." Dorothy pauses by her kitchen doorway, her silver eyebrows drawing together. "And did these cameras feed to his phone?" "And his mother's." My laugh sounds hollow even to my ears. "For backup, in case something happened while he was at work." She nods, disappearing into the kitchen. I hear the clatter of cups, the whistle of a kettle, ordinary sounds that haven't existed in my home since Sylvia moved in temporarily after our honeymoon. When Dorothy returns with 2 steaming mugs, she sets them on coasters before lowering herself into an armchair across from me. "Tell me about your bank accounts, Elena." The question jolts me, not, "How did you meet?" or, "When did things change?" but this specific, practical detail that seems simultaneously invasive and essential. I had my own checking account when we married. I wrap my fingers around the warm ceramic mug, but Gavin convinced me to open a joint account for household expenses. Then my teaching paycheck started going there. Then my name came off the mortgage for tax purposes. Each sentence maps the slow erosion of my financial independence. Last year, he canceled my separate credit card because we didn't need the extra annual fee. Dorothy doesn't write anything down, but her eyes never leave my face. "Your phone?" "Always on the family plan." He gets the detailed call logs. I take a sip of tea to disguise the tremor in my voice. "And he installed a family tracking app after I got lost driving to his company picnic last summer." "Do your parents know any of this?" My throat tightens. We only speak on speakerphone now. Sylvia says it's rude to exclude family members from conversations. Outside, a school bus rumbles past, children's voices carrying through the windows. I remember my classroom, 20 eager 4-year-olds building block towers and learning to write their names. The principal's confused expression when I submitted my resignation after Gavin explained that, with the baby coming, we need Elena focused on family. "He was so different when we met," I whisper. "So attentive. He remembered my favorite flowers were sunflowers. He listened when I talked about my students." Dorothy's face remains neutral, neither doubting nor confirming. "And your friends?" "They stopped coming over after the 3rd time Sylvia mentioned her migraine triggered by loud, inconsiderate guests. Melissa tried to meet me for coffee twice. But Gavin always needed the car that day." Each explanation sounds absurd now, strung together like carnival lights illuminating what I refuse to see. "I haven't spoken to my college roommate in 14 months. Dorothy sets her mug down with deliberate care. "Elena, I'm going to connect you with someone at Rosehaven Women's Shelter. They have an advocate who can help with your next steps." Shelter? The word conjures images from after-school specials, battered women with blackened eyes huddling on cots. "Not all abuse leaves bruises, dear." Dorothy's voice carries the weight of decades witnessing stories like mine. "Sometimes it leaves bank statements and surveillance cameras instead." I pull out my phone, scrolling through text messages while Dorothy makes a call from her landline. "Gavin, 3 months ago. Where are you? The car tracker shows you at the grocery store for 45 minutes now. What's taking so long?" "Gavin, 6 weeks ago. Mom found your birth control pills. We agreed to start our family this year. Why are you undermining our plans?" "Gavin, last week. Your mother called while you were in the shower. I told her you're too exhausted for phone calls. You should be grateful I protect your time. Each message links to others, forming a chain I've been carrying link by link without seeing its true weight. When Dorothy returns, she sits beside me on the sofa. Officer Reeves will be here in 30 minutes to take your statement for a temporary restraining order, Doctor. Martinez at Providence Hospital has agreed to mark your maternity file as protected status. My phone buzzes with Gavin's face illuminating the screen. 10 missed calls already. They'll fight this. I say, fear constricting my chest as my daughter kicks against my ribs. Sylvia knows everyone in our neighborhood. She'll tell them I'm unstable, hormonal, imagining things. Dorothy places a weathered hand over mine. That's exactly why we document everything. The truth leaves patterns, Elena. And now that you can see them, other people will too. I silence my phone as another call comes through. For the first time in 2 years, I don't answer Gavin immediately. The small act of resistance feels simultaneously terrifying and necessary, like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. 3 weeks later, I was still with Dorothy. However, the bouquet arrived at Dorothy's house first, lilies, my supposed favorite, then at my parents' temporary rental, then at the women's shelter where I'd attended one support group meeting. The card read the same each time. We're waiting for you to come to your senses. Think of our baby. Our baby. The possessive pronoun made my stomach clench harder than the Braxton Hicks contractions that had started last week. He's escalating, Officer Mercer said, adding the flower shop receipts to my growing file. Her uniform looked crisp against Dorothy's faded floral couch where we sat. This is textbook boundary testing. What if he shows up at the hospital? The question had haunted me for weeks. Then hospital security removes him. She replied with the confidence of someone who'd never seen Gavin's particular brand of charm. Your OB has flagged your file. No visitors without your explicit permission. My mother appeared in the doorway, face tight with the guilt she'd carried since arriving from Salem. The security chief at Providence called. They've added Gavin and Sylvia's photos at all entrance desks. What kind of woman needs armed guards to deliver her baby? The question hung unspoken as my mother crossed the room to perch beside me, her hand cool against my forehead like when I was small. I should have seen it sooner, she whispered, not for the first time. So should I. The baby kicked, a reminder of why every painful step mattered. The phone rang, and Dorothy answered in the kitchen. Her voice dropped to a murmur, then stopped altogether. When she returned, her face had hardened. Melissa from your old school called. Sylvia's been telling people you've had some sort of breakdown, that you're not mentally stable enough to care for an infant. The familiar twist of shame rose, then receded. She said the same thing when I sold my condo to move in with them, when I gave notice at the school, when I stopped calling my brother. My father stood in the corner, hands deep in his pockets. He'd spoken little since arriving, his silence carrying the weight of a man recalculating everything he thought he knew. Your friend Jana just texted, my mother said, checking my phone for me. Gavin's mother approached her outside the grocery store, told her you need an intervention before you. She trailed off. Before I what? Before you ruin the baby's life by keeping it from its father. The contraction struck without warning, sharp and insistent, not practiced this time. 14 hours later, the Providence Hospital's labor floor smelled of antiseptic and new beginnings. The intake nurse Belinda, according to her badge, glanced from her computer to my face. You're the one with the security alert, she said, not unkindly. Let's get you settled before shift change. The next hours blurred into a rhythm of pain and pause. My mother on one side, Dorothy on the other, my father pacing the hallway, standing sentinel. Each contraction stronger than the last, like the current pulling me toward a new shore. You're doing wonderfully, the midwife assured me between checks. 5 centimeters already. The monitor beside the bed beeped in steady confirmation of the baby's heartbeat, stronger than my own felt some days. I focused on that sound, let it anchor me against memories of Gavin's voice. You'll never manage without me. You can barely remember to take vitamins without my reminders. The elevator chime in the hallway triggered a Pavlovian response, spine stiffening, breath catching. My mother noticed, her hand tightening around mine. "It's just the food cart," she said. Then softer, "He can't hurt you here." But he could. With words, with the way people looked at me after he'd spoken to them, with the threat of what would happen once I was alone with a newborn and no one watching. The nurse stuck her head in. "Everything okay in here? Your heart rate spiked." "False alarm," Dorothy answered for me. "How about some ice chips?" After she left, Dorothy leaned closer. Robert texted, "Gavin and Sylvia are downstairs demanding information." My throat closed around a sob. "They won't get past the front desk," my mother promised, but her eyes darted to the door. The contraction that followed crashed through any pretense of control, bending me forward with its force. I heard a sound primitive, wounded, and realized it came from me. The midwife appeared, checking monitors. "You're transitioning fast. Let's see where we are." Her examination confirmed what my body already knew. No turning back now. 8 centimeters, she announced. "Let's get the delivery team in here." The room transformed around me, equipment appearing, voices professional and focused. The head nurse, an older woman with salt and pepper hair cropped, short, took command with the ease of someone who'd seen every possible complication. "Margaret, help her with breathing. Dorothy, you're on ice duty. And Mr. Patterson," she called to my father in the doorway, "security just called up. You might want to join them downstairs." My father's face hardened into something I'd never seen before. He disappeared without a word. "Focus on me," the midwife instructed as another contraction began. "This baby's coming quick." Through the haze of pain, I heard raised voices in the hallway, first distant, then closer. A woman's voice, practiced in righteous indignation. "That's my grandchild. You have no right to keep me from my son's child." "Sylvia." The nurse hit a button beside the bed. 2 security officers appeared outside my door within seconds. "It's handled," the nurse assured me, but I couldn't stop shaking. What if they take her? The fear escaped before I could contain it. What if a judge gives them? "Not today," Dorothy interrupted firmly. "Today, you make the rules." The next contraction silenced everything except the overwhelming need to push. The room narrowed to a tunnel of determination, pain with purpose, fear transmuted into strength. "I see the head," the midwife announced. "One more big push." Somewhere beyond the door, beyond this room of women surrounding me, my husband was being escorted from the building. But here, in this circle of protection I never knew I'd need, something else was happening. I was delivering not just my daughter but myself. "Push, Elena," my mother urged, her voice breaking. "You're stronger than you know." With the last reserves of strength I didn't know I possessed, I pushed toward freedom. And my daughter, slippery, red-faced, and gloriously furious, slid into the world with a cry that declared her presence to everyone within earshot. "She's perfect," the midwife said, placing her on my chest. "What's her name?" I looked down at my daughter's face, unmarked by fear or doubt, at her tiny fists already punching against the injustice of cold air and bright lights. "Hazel," I whispered, the name I'd chosen alone, without committee approval or negotiation. "Hazel Grace Monroe. Not Whitlow, never Whitlow." "Hello, Hazel," I promised against her damp head. "You will never know that kind of fear." 2 months later, the apartment complex stood 6 stories tall, its brick facade weathered but sturdy. Nothing fancy, exactly what I needed. Far enough from Portland that Gavin wouldn't stumble across me at the grocery store, close enough that my parents could drive over without making it an expedition. "This unit faces east," said Marissa, the housing coordinator. Her salt and pepper hair curled around her face as she unlocked the door. "Morning sun for you and Hazel." I shifted my 8-week-old daughter against my shoulder, her warm weight the most solid thing in my life. She blinked sleepily at the sunlight streaming through bare windows. "The security features include a key code entrance downstairs," Marissa continued. "Hallway cameras and a guard who works overnight. No one gets in without being buzzed up or having a resident key." My breath caught. No one gets in. 4 simple words that sounded like a promise. The apartment itself was basic beige walls, scratched laminate floors, a kitchen with appliances from the previous decade. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a living area that would fit my parents' hand-me-down sofa if I positioned it just right. Marissa watched me take it all in. The subsidy covers most of the rent for the first year. After that, we reassess based on your income situation. I wandered to the smaller bedroom, already seeing it transformed with the yellow curtains my mother had salvaged from my childhood room. Hazel would have her own space, not a corner of Sylvia's pristine guest room where my mother-in-law could monitor my every parenting move. "What do you think?" Marissa asked. What did I think? That this plain, unremarkable apartment represented more freedom than I'd known in 3 years? That the thought of hanging a picture without explaining why made my heart race with something other than fear? "I'll take it," I said, the words rushing out before doubt could creep in. Later that afternoon, I sat cross-legged on the empty bedroom floor while my father measured for curtain rods and my mother jotted furniture dimensions on a notepad. Hazel dozed in her portable bassinet, oblivious to this monumental shift in our lives. "The kitchen needs better lighting," Mom said, scribbling another note, "and you'll want a deadbolt for the balcony door." Dad looked up from his measuring tape. "Already on my list, Maggie." A notification pinged on my phone. My stomach tightened. The automatic response to Gavin's messages developed over months of walking on eggshells. I glanced down, expecting another manipulation disguised as concern. Instead, an email from my former teaching director. "Would you be interested in creating online curriculum packages? We can discuss flexible hours that work with your new situation." Work. My own money. My namey, real name, not Mrs. Whitlow, a contract. "Elena?" Mom's voice pulled me back. "Everything okay?" I showed her the email, watched her eyes brighten with tears. "Your old life finding you again," she said, squeezing my hand. "Not my old life exactly. Something new constructed from pieces of who I used to be, before Gavin convinced me that independence was selfishness and disagreement was disrespect." The lease agreement sat on the kitchen counter, signed that morning. Elena Monroe, single mother, resident of Vancouver, Washington. No one had questioned why I used my maiden name or needed a fresh start. Marissa had simply nodded when I explained my situation, then doubled the security deposit without comment. When Dad finished measuring, he placed the keys in my palm, closing my fingers around them. "Your place," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Your rules." I clutched those keys all evening, even after my parents left to check into their rental nearby. The metal warmed against my skin as I fed Hazel, as I unfolded the air mattress that would serve as my bed until the weekend. Just before midnight, my phone buzzed with an alert from the building's security app, someone at the front desk asking for me. My blood froze as I clicked on the notification, revealing the lobby camera feed. Sylvia stood at the entrance, designer purse clutched in manicured hands, speaking urgently to the night guard. Beyond the glass doors, a familiar car idled at the curb. "Gavin." I took a deep breath and reached for my phone, not in panic this time, but with the calm precision of someone who had prepared for this moment. 3 taps to call my attorney's emergency line. "They found us," I said simply. A month later, the courthouse corridor stretched before me like a gauntlet. I adjusted Hazel against my shoulder, her weight both grounding and fortifying. My attorney Thomas squeezed my elbow, his voice a steady anchor. "Remember, speak only to the judge, no matter what they say." I nodded, feeling the now familiar steel replace the butterflies in my stomach. After months of preparation, today would determine our future. Inside the courtroom, Gavin sat with perfect posture at the defendant's table. His dark blue suit, the one he wore to important business meetings, looked freshly pressed. Beside him, Sylvia dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, her silver hair styled in the immaculate bob she maintained weekly at her salon. "All rise," the bailiff called. Judge Martinez entered, her face impassive beneath silver-streaked black hair. At her nod, we sat. I passed Hazel to my mother in the first row and approached the witness stand when called. "Mrs. Whitlow," Gavin's attorney began. "Miss Monroe," I corrected. The small act of reclaiming my name still tasted like victory on my tongue. The attorney, a man with a voice smooth as warmed honey, smiled as if I'd made a charming mistake. "Of course, Miss Monroe. Wouldn't you agree that a child deserves both parents in her life?" I believe every child deserves safety and stability." His smile tightened. "And you don't believe my client can provide that?" I met his gaze without flinching. "No." Despite his consistent completion of court-ordered anger management, despite the nursery he's prepared, despite his financial support. Thomas stood. "Objection. Compound question." "Sustained," Judge Martinez said. The attorney adjusted his approach. For 40 minutes he painted Gavin as a devoted father denied his rights. He displayed photos of a perfectly arranged nursery and Gavin's home pale yellow walls, handcrafted wooden crib, stuffed animals arranged with mathematical precision. All he wants is overnight visits with his daughter. Is that so unreasonable? I stared at the nursery photos, remembering the day Gavin had thrown my childhood teddy bear in the trash because it cluttered our bedroom. How he'd called my decorating choices tacky until I stopped making them. "That nursery wasn't created for Hazel," I said. "It was created for this courtroom." Gavin's face darkened. Sylvia whispered something in his ear. When Thomas took over questioning, he started with the bus incident. "Can you describe what happened that day?" The memory flooded back, the crushing fullness of my pregnant belly, the ache in my swollen feet, the press of Gavin's fingers on my arm. I was 8.5 months pregnant. Gavin demanded I stand so his mother could sit down. When I refused, he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. I pulled back my sleeve, revealing a fading yellow mark. "This is from last week when he accidentally grabbed me during a supervised visit." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Martinez called for order. "Why did you never report these incidents before the bus confrontation?" I looked directly at Gavin for the first time. Because he told me no one would believe me, that I was too emotional, too hormonal, too sensitive. After a while, I believed him. Thomas presented my evidence methodically. Text messages from Gavin. "If you leave the house without permission again, you'll regret it." Bank statements showing transfers from my account to his without my knowledge. Security camera footage from our home showing Gavin blocking doorways during arguments. When the recording played, Gavin's voice threatening consequences after the bus incident, Sylvia's composure cracked. "That's been doctored," she called out. "My son would never." "Mrs. Whitlow," Judge Martinez warned, "another outburst and you'll be removed." Dorothy took the stand next, her decades of counseling experience lending weight to her testimony. The isolation tactics described by Miss Monroe follow classic patterns of coercive control. The involvement of the mother-in-law as a secondary controller is something I've documented in approximately 30% of cases. When Gavin finally testified, his charm worked overtime. He spoke of misunderstandings, of his concern for a pregnant wife making irrational decisions, of his mother's loving support. "I just want to be part of my daughter's life," he said, voice breaking perfectly. "Is that so wrong?" During cross-examination, Thomas remained steady. "Mr. Whitlow, can you explain this text you sent Miss Monroe 3 days after she left? You've humiliated me." "You'll pay for that." I was upset. Anyone would be. "And this email to her employer suggesting she was mentally unstable?" I was concerned for her students' safety. "And the 6 violations of the temporary restraining order?" Gavin's mask slipped. "She's manipulating the system. She's turned my own child against me." "Hazel is now 4 months old, Mr. Whitlow." The courtroom fell silent. In that moment, I saw what everyone else saw, not the charming man who'd once brought me flowers, but someone unraveling when control slipped away. Judge Martinez's ruling came swiftly. Permanent restraining order granted, supervised visitation only, full custody to me with sole decision-making authority. Court-mandated therapy for Gavin before any visitation expansion. "She's my wife," Gavin shouted, standing. "That's my child." The judge's response cut through his protest like a blade through silk. "Mr. Whitlow, she is not your property." As I walked out with Hazel secure in my arms, Sylvia's voice carried across the emptying courtroom. "This isn't over, Elena." I didn't turn around. For the first time since stepping off that bus 8 months ago, I believed her threat held no power. "It is for me," I whispered to my daughter. "It is for us." A year later, the golden afternoon light spills through the kitchen window of my apartment. catching in Hazel's auburn curls as she toddles toward me with arms outstretched. Her first steps came 3 weeks ago, a moment of triumph I captured on my camera now, used for memories worth keeping, not evidence worth fearing. "Mama," she squeals, dimples flashing in a smile that sometimes makes my heart catch. Those are Gavin's dimples, but on her, they hold no shadow. I scoop her up, breathing in the sweet scent of baby shampoo and graham crackers. "Look at you go, little explorer." A year. One full trip around the sun since Judge Winter's gavel came down with the finality I'd craved. 1 year of rebuilding what was mine. The apartment hums with afternoon quiet. A vase of yellow daisies brightens the kitchen counterflowers I bought for myself, with no hidden message attached. My teaching materials spread across the dining table, colorful and ordered, evidence of the curriculum contract I completed last night for a preschool in Beaverton. The doorbell chimes and Max lifts his golden head from his spot by the couch. My parents' familiar knock follows no unexpected visitors in this building, thanks to key-coded access and a night guard who knows every resident by name. "We come bearing dinner," Dad announces, holding up a casserole dish while Mom kneels to receive Hazel's enthusiastic greeting. Neither of them glance around with worried eyes anymore, scanning for signs of my distress. We've moved beyond rescue. "You're looking bright today," Mom says, touching my cheek with a gentle hand. "Therapy day." I smile, pouring coffee into the mismatched mugs I've collected, small rebellions against Sylvia's insistence on matching everything. "Doctor Kaufman says we're focusing on future plans now, not just past healing." The appointments that once left me drained now send me home lighter, as if releasing ballast I never knew I carried. Dad nods, understanding without words. "Your brother called. He and Carla want to visit next month." Another piece fitting back into place. James had been bewildered by my sudden withdrawal during the marriage, hurt when invitations were repeatedly declined with thin excuses. Now our conversations flow naturally again, even across the miles. After dinner, when Hazel sleeps and my parents have returned to their nearby rental, I settle on the small balcony with my journal and a cup of peppermint tea. The pages no longer detail injustices or catalog incidents. Tonight, I sketch rough plans for a weekend trip to the co-store, first real vacation. My phone buzzes with a text from Dorothy. "Workshop went well. 3 women asked for your resource guide. Coffee Tuesday?" I smile, typing back confirmation. The guide began as notes for my Selford flags I'd missed, resources I'd found, steps toward freedom. Now it helps others find their way out of shadows similar to mine. The court-mandated visitation report sits on my coffee table. Gavin's therapist notes consistent improvement and growing awareness of boundary issues. His last supervised visit with Hazel included no mention of Sylvia, no subtle digs about my parenting, no passive-aggressive gifts intended to undermine me. Small steps, observed with my cautious approval but without the old fear. I write in my journal, freedom isn't just about escape. It's about building something worth staying for. The evening breeze carries the scent of my neighbor's grilling dinner and distant laughter from the courtyard below. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Tomorrow, we'll ride the number 42 bus across town to visit the Children's Museum. The same route, the same driver who once helped change the course of my life. I'll sit anywhere I choose, and when someone offers me a seat, I'll say thank you or no thank you without explanation. Because I can.